Hey YouTube. So today we're going to take a look at the second of the two free lawnmowers I got the other day. The pretty red Craftsman with the B&S Quantum engine on it. It has probably similar issues to the Husky. The wheels in the back are kind of stiff, and I suspect it has a nasty carburetor as well. So let's dig in and see what we find. So both of the rear wheel drive, actually this one feels pretty good. Maybe it's just the other wheel that's kind of binding up. Both of the height adjusters in the back are frozen. So I'm going to squirt some WD-40 on them and try to loosen them up, because this is cutting really low to the ground. And we got both of the rear wheels off. As you can see, the axles are pretty dirty, rusty. So I'm going to use my drill with the brush on it, clean them up. And we've got both axles nice and shiny and clean. I'm going to stick some lithium grease on the axle and also on this gear. And before I put it on the gear, I'm going to clean up that gear. And we got all the dirt out of the sprocket. Let's throw on a little grease. And we'll put the nut back on. And it's a 9/16. And we'll do the other side. So now that we've fixed the wheels and they turn once again, let's take a look at this carburetor. Once again, I know what's behind here, but I will show you what's behind door number 2. A very nasty, filthy, dirty air filter. When I took a look at this the other day, it had dirt caked in these fins. This is actually clean, and it's still bad. So we'll put a new one in, or at least a good used one. But before we do that, we'll take this carburetor and cover off just like we did the Husky. So 3 bolts, 5/16. We'll get those out. And we remove the air filter housing. And you'll see here, here's the auto choke, the fan. It's missing the spring. It should connect right there to that tab there. It's missing. So I'll see if I can scrounge up a spare. But before we even get that far, let's take this carburetor off. So in order to remove the carburetor, I'll take off this 1/4" bolt for the auto choke. Just set that off to the side. I'll move fuel clamp. And then the carburetor is held on by 2 3/4" bolts, one on each side. So we'll get those loosened. And both bolts are out. Loosen the fuel line. Get that off. and take it off the throttle linkage. So there's the outside of the carburetor, caked in dirt. Let's take a look at the inside. Follow me. So here's our carburetor. I sprayed off the outside. Got most of the dirt off. Let's crack open this jet. It's a 1/2 inch. And that looks pretty good. And that looks pretty good. I'm very surprised. I was expecting both of these carburetors to look the same, which is crappy. That looks really good. Well, since it's apart, we'll give it a clean. So on these older Quantums, the way you clean out the carburetors, there's a tiny hole in the jet there. Now this one's clear. Usually they're plugged up. I'm going to shoot some carb spray through it anyways to make sure it's clear. And then I also take a wiggly wire, if you can see it there, and I run it through all the jet holes and make sure it's all open. Run it through the top. And then shoot carb spray through it again. So that should be okay, that jet. I'll spray some in the bowl, clean that out, and then I'll show you how we clean the carburetor. And here's the carburetor. This gasket here is torn, so we'll take that off. I have extras. So we're going to spray a carb cleaner all in here, in these holes, these holes, everywhere. And we can also take our wiggly wire and run it through these holes, and then squirt them out again with carb cleaner, and then it should be clean. So here's the carburetor, should be all cleaned out. Let's reassemble. Take the float, put in the needle, drop that back in, take the pin, slide it in, take our clean bowl, put it on, and our clean jet. We'll screw that back on. There we go. And when I turn it this way, right side up, and try to blow in this hole, I can. When I flip it upside down and try to blow in the hole, I can't. So that tells me the needle and seat are working like they should. So let's put it back on the lawnmower. And I poured a little bit of gas into the tank and let it run through the fuel line. The tank looked clean, but I just want to make sure I don't put any contaminants in our nicely cleaned carburetor. And I've made the executive decision. We're going to take off the tank and the recoil, because as you can see here, the rope is kind of frayed, so we'll put a new rope in it. The hands you see are my dad. Say hi, Dad.
Hi, how are you?
So there's 3 bolts that hold the tank on the top here. They're 5/16. There's one down underneath, that's 3/8. We'll get those out. So the gas tank is off to the side, and there's one 5/16 bolt that holds the dipstick on. We need to get that off. And the dipstick is now out of the way. There are 4 bolts that hold the recoil on, 2 in the back, 2 in the front. They are 3/8. And here's a little tip. If you want to know if someone's ever been into your engine before, at least if they've taken this rewind off, take the bolts out and try to remove it. If you struggle, bend that forward and it comes right off. So if it puts up a fight, that's a good indication that nobody's been in here before, most likely. And here is our engine. So I took the recoil off for 2 reasons. 1, to replace the rope, and 2, I know this lawnmower's been outside, at least for some period of time. So I wanted to make sure everything underneath was clean and there was no mouse nest under here. So I'm going to get my air compressor and blow off any dirt. It looks pretty good. So you all remember this engine, right? When I took the head off and found out the cylinders scored, you remember I put a brand new rope in here? I'm going to try to transplant the recoil. This engine is also ready start like the Craftsman. I think it'll transplant just fine. Let's go find out. So in addition to grabbing the recoil off this junk engine, I'm also going to grab the choke spring. And we have removed the recoil from the junk engine. Moment of truth. Like a glove. So our recoil with the brand new rope fits. One thing you want to watch for when you put these back together, this little flange here, it's got tabs that go on the inside and a tab in the middle that goes on the outside. When you put it back together, you want to try to line that up correctly. So let's bolt this back down. And as you may recall, this recoil is held on by 4 bolts, 2 in the front, 2 in the back. The ones in the front are the longer ones. The ones that go in the back are the short. And I almost forgot, before we bolt that down, we need to stick our air vane back in. And we need the thermostatic choke to line up in here. So we'll just set that right there, and then we'll bolt down the recoil. and we'll line up that flange. So now we'll get that bolted down. And the recoil is back on. 2 bolts in the front, 2 bolts on the back, 3/8. I reconnected the dipstick, 1 bolt, 5/16. Now let's get the carburetor and gas tank back on. So now we'll put back on our carburetor. We'll reconnect the governor linkage and 2 bolts, both 3/8, and we'll get those in. Carburetor's bolted back on. Now we will reconnect the air vane for the ready start. And you want to make sure that this nub here goes into this groove right there. Like that. So we'll get that bolted down. And before I go too much further, I need to grab that choke spring for the auto choke. I need to grab that off of the junk engine, so let's do that real quick. And there is our tiny spring that I was talking about. We'll hook one end on that and the other end onto there. So now our auto choke should work. So now we will reinstall the air filter box. And I noticed in the back, I don't know if it'll show there, the little hose that connects the air box to the tube for the crankcase ventilation, it's all kinked. I don't know how that happened. Maybe somebody did take this off and put it on backwards, I don't know. If I have a spare, let's use that. And you may recall that our carburetor had a damaged gasket. So I will put on a brand new one. And I have fed the new rope through the cover, gas tank, and back down there. So now we can reinstall our gas tank. Tank is still empty. This fuel line feels fine. It's still flexible. So let's bolt this down. 3 bolts in the top, 5/16, and then 1 down underneath here, 3/8. And the gas tank is bolted back down. Now we'll put on the air filter cover, or the air filter box. We got a brand new gasket in the back and a replacement elbow hose. So let's get this back on. 3 bolts, 5/16. I'll slip on the little ventilation tube and we'll bolt that down. And we just took out the spark plug. It's a first fire. I'm going to replace it with my old reliable, if that comes out, Champion. Brand new. So we'll put that in. And 2 things left before we put gas in it and start it. Put the screws back in the cover. And I have a good used air filter, at least for testing. We'll tighten that down. So be right back. Okay everybody, moment of truth. It's all back together. We put a little gas in it. I checked the oil. It's dirty, but at least it's up to level. So let's see what, if anything, happens. It's a ready start, so there's no priming. Sounds pretty good, and the self-propelled works. Let's go mow some grass. So there she is, folks. Our free red Craftsman. We got it running. We cleaned the carburetor. We fixed the self-propelled. We freed up the wheels that were sticking. We replaced the pull rope with a new one. Put in a good, clean, used air filter. And we put in a brand new spark plug. And off camera, to dress it up a little bit, I even spray painted the handlebars, because they were just a little beat up and a little rusty looking. So this is going to be a good lawnmower. I'm tentatively planning to give this to a friend. So we still need to tune it up, change the oil and sharpen the blade. We'll do that in a follow-up video. At least she's a runner. Thanks for watching.